Federico, it's another episode of Unwind, and this is the last one of 2021. We're going to take a little bit of time off after this, come back in January, and we're going to close out this series of media picks, all Unwind picks, talking about video games today. Maybe we'll take a little break in the middle and talk a little bit about what's going on with MacStories, but we've got games to cover. This is the opposite of the TV and movie show where I did most of the talking. I think that you played more video games than me this year. I aspired to more games, but the reality is my list is short because these are 2021 games. And I'll tell you, video games are my comfort food. And I went back and replayed a lot of Breath of the Wild and Pokemon Sword. I played a lot of those games this year that they don't count for this episode, but I think those are still good games to go back to because they're a lot of fun.
Yeah. So I have a few things to say up front. First,
okay.
I kind of enjoy this format of Unwind where we do more media focus. It's right there in the name, right? So I think that also helps. I've been enjoying doing this end of the year sort of media focused episodes. Maybe something we should explore more in 2022.
I don't know. We'll see.
Something else that I want to mention, just as a general thing, don't feel bad for this. I'm going to say this because it's something that I've struggled with and that I've learned to accept. Don't feel bad for trying many different video games and only sticking with few of them and abandoning them. Like, nobody is forcing you to play a game you don't like.
It's not a job. It's not a job to finish a game.
Video games should be something that you enjoy, something that you like. And I'm going to say this because these days we have so much choice when it comes to video games.
That's
between
true.
iOS, the Switch, Steam. So the whole world of PC games that we don't usually cover, but we will because I'm getting a Steam Deck. The PS5, Xbox, Game Pass. Like, there's so much choice. There's so many different games. Don't feel bad if you pick a game that you think you're going to like and you play for 30 minutes, you play for an hour, it doesn't really work for you. And you're like, you know what? I'm going to abandon this. It's fine. Don't feel bad. Also, don't feel bad if the game that is in the cultural zeitgeist at the moment doesn't really work for you. I had this thing with Deathloop. When everybody was talking about Deathloop and it was very positively reviewed, didn't really work for me. And you know what? I bought the game. I didn't ask for a refund. It's fine. I played for 2 hours. Wasn't really working for me. I put it on the sort of virtual shelf of my PS5. That's fine. Like, nobody's judging you. Like, you're not a video game. Well, I'm going to say most of you listening to this likely are not video game reviewers. Like, you're not doing this for a job, for a living. It's totally fine.
Yeah, no, I agree with that completely. And I'm kind of okay with being the last person to play certain games because, I don't know, I get around to it eventually. Life's busy. And if some nights I don't want to choose something new and I just want to wander around in Breath of the Wild, checking things out and maybe doing a few battles here and there, that's perfectly fine too. I just noticed as we record this today that Alien Isolation is out on iOS, and I think I'm going to play it, Federico. I think I'm going to
do it
because I've got the controller with the MagSafe bracket. I think that could be a lot of fun. Creepy late night playing. That's a scary game. You played that a bit, didn't you, back in the day?
I think so. Yeah.
A little bit? Yeah. Anyway, that's an older one, and we're here to talk about new games. So why don't we go by platform, and I'll let you start off with the PS5. I've got some things to say here. But my PS5 didn't come until I think it was October, so I haven't had a lot of chance to play very many games.
One more thing before I talk about PS5 games, about this keeping track of games, trying multiple games. There's this amazing service that I actually discovered this a few months ago. Never really had the time to do this until a couple of weeks ago. It's called Backlogged without the E. So BACKLOGGD, Backlogged. It's an incredible service. I think it's the first time, like, it's one of those moments like this clicked for me. It's exactly the kind of service that works with the way that my brain likes to think of, like, what am I playing at the moment versus what's in my backlog versus what's coming up or that I may want to check out in the future. So go check it out. They have a Patreon thing going where you can become a backer. And if you're a backer, you get access to more features on the website. I should say it's a website only. They don't have native apps yet, but the web app is so good. And the structure that it provides for, like, what are you playing at the moment? What's in your backlog? They have different states for a game. So a game can be like abandoned, it can be retired, it can be paused, which is exactly how I think of games. Like, there's games that I've paused, but I know I will pick them up again. There are games that I just abandoned. Like, I played it, so it counts as played, but it's also abandoned in that I will never play it again.
Right, you're not going to go back to it. That makes sense.
Yep.
Do they have an API, Federico?
No. It's made by a single person that has a Patreon campaign, but it's also so good. So I just wanted to mention this.
Sure.
It's very nice. Anyway, PS5. Okay. PS5, I feel so. There's two big games that I finished this year on PS5 that did not come out on in 2021. First one is the launch title for PS5, Spider-Man Miles Morales. I finished it in 2021. I mostly played it in 2021 because I didn't have the time when I got my PS5 last year in November. Didn't have the time for it. I finished the game this year. Fantastic game. I enjoyed the story. Loved the graphics, the fast travel. It's if you enjoyed Spider-Man on PS4, this is more of the same, but it looks better. And I think the story is actually like it's a better story about family and friendship. I enjoyed it more. The combat is so tight. This is one of the few games where, all games these days, they have a skill tree for, sort of like RPG-like elements for unlocking different abilities as you, collect skill points or move up in levels or something like that. This is one of the few games where that mechanic, that skill tree mechanic, is not as overwhelming as, say, in a Ubisoft game, like in an Assassin's Creed game. It's very tight. All the different movesets and combos are easy to memorize, I think. And it just looks plain gorgeous on PS5, right? It looks incredible. It looks amazing. The fast travel is so fast because of the SSD. And the use of the haptic feedback on the DualSense is also very nicely done. So this is a 2020 game, but I finished it in 2021.
Yeah, I put this on my list too, because to me, everything's a 2021 game with the PS5 since I didn't
Anything can be a 2021 game for you.
I didn't have an opportunity to even see a PS5 until the end of 2021. But this was one of the first games that I downloaded. And I just love the way the movement works in this game. It all feels so fluid. As you said, the story is fantastic. It's not super difficult. It's one of those games that you can kind of, even if you're only going to dip into it on occasion, you can go in and play for a while and then come back to it later. And, even just kind of swing around the city on your web, even if you don't, just do a few side quests or things like that. You don't even have to play the full, the story mode if you don't want. And I've only just, played a small amount of this game, but it really scratched the right itch the minute that I dropped into it and started playing. So I'm looking forward to doing a little bit more of this over the holidays with my kids.
Yeah. I also finished Final Fantasy VII Remake on PS5 this year. I finished it before the PS5 upgrade came out. I really enjoyed that game. I think I mentioned it before. I don't want to spoil the story, but they took some really interesting directions with the changes from the original Final Fantasy VII. However, I have been playing, and I hope to be able to wrap it up soon, the DLC to Final Fantasy VII Remake episode Intergrade that focuses on Yuffie, another character from the original Final Fantasy VII. This is a DLC, like it's a single episode. It's much more self-contained than the first installment of Final Fantasy VII Remake, which, by the way, I wonder when part 2 will come out. Maybe next year, maybe 2023. We'll see. I'm enjoying Intergrade because controlling and fighting with Yuffie is very enjoyable. She's got this sort of nunchucks, as weapons, and of course, Intergrade. I paid for the PS5 upgrade, and so it looks much better with 4K and 60 frames on PS5. It's more of the same in terms of Final Fantasy VII Remake, more story, different main protagonist, very enjoyable. Something that I am very much enjoying at the moment, John, on PS5 is Kena Bridge of Spirits. So Kena is an action adventure game. It's basically like a Zelda-like game. You control Kena, this character. She has the power to let spirits, sort of reach the afterlife. And so she needs to help spirits who are stuck in this sort of weird stage between our world and the actual afterlife. And there's this story about this forest that has been taken over by these evil spirits that are unable to move on. This is a beautiful game. It doesn't tread any new. It doesn't break any new ground in terms of like combat mechanics or like new ideas. It's this semi-open world, area that is sort of like Horizon. If you remember Horizon from PS4, it's not as open world as Zelda Breath of the Wild. There are paths that you need to follow, right? There's a map, you can fast travel, you can walk around if you want, but you are on a set path most of the time. It's a beautiful game. I believe the developers of this game, this is their first video game.
Really?
They were an animation studio before.
Oh.
I guess they still are, which shows in the cutscenes, but it really shows in the overall graphics of the game. Like it's absolutely a beauty. It looks like a Pixar video game, basically.
Wow.
And it's fun. This is the classic like 7.5 out of 10 game. Like it's not revolutionary. It doesn't do anything that you haven't seen before.
But you still enjoy it.
It's enjoyable. The story is surprisingly emotional in places. It's beautiful to look at. It makes you happy that you got a PS5 because you're like, yeah, I see it now. This is a PS5 game. It's pretty, it's beautiful, it's fun. The combat is tight, surprisingly challenging in a few places. Like I've died a bunch of times and I needed to, it's not Metroid Dread, but yeah, I recommend it. It's again, not revolutionary, but enjoyable. You can play it at night. It's not scary. It's colorful. I like it.
Oh, that sounds good. Well, before you get there, I mean, this is one that I knew that you'd been playing for, I don't know, a week or two maybe or something like that. And it's really intrigued me because I know nothing about it, but this sounds exactly like my kind of game because I like that sort of Breath of the Wild style game. So I'll have to check it out over the holidays.
Yeah. And lastly, again, on this sort of genre, the action adventure / platformer genre, something that I started playing before the summer that I paused, but I want to pick up again is Ratchet and Clank Rift Apart. I want to go pick it up again. I played for like 4 to 5 hours and then I stopped because I got busy with WWDC and the iOS review. But this was a gorgeous looking game. Again, very tight action. The controls were fun. The graphics, of course, are incredible. It really shows in the traveling between different dimensions. It shows the benefits of the fast SSD in the PS5. But I paused it months ago. I want to pick it up again, maybe over the holidays.
Yeah, that's another one that I've played a little bit, but not a lot. It's one of the first games I picked up, and I just love the way you move between the different parts of this game. And, action adventure games are kind of, I guess, my sweet spot, and this is why I picked this one up as well. So, again, on my holiday list as well. All right, Federico, before we move on to either the Xbox or Nintendo Switch, do you want to talk a little bit about MacStories and what happened this week in the Apple world?
What happened this week in the Apple
world? We had our MacStories Selects Awards. So we had 9 awards, including a new one, the Lifetime Achievement Award, which we announced on Monday. And so that's been the big focus of our week. It's actually been the focus of our lives, I guess, for about a month or so. I mean, we've been doing a lot getting ready for this. There's a lot of pieces to the puzzle. But as we record this now, the awards are on their way all over the world. It was a really diverse group this year. We had 2 in the UK, but no other multiple awards per country. So there was 1 in the US, couple in the UK, Hungary and Canada, and all over the place. Really, really a great list of apps this year. So we announced those. We also I had like a little preview of Pixelmator Photo, which is on the iPhone now. I didn't have this long enough in advance to really do a proper review, but I'm very familiar with the iPad app, and this is a remarkable design. To me, this is already something that I'm thinking about for the Selects Awards next year, because there's a lot going on in this app. There's over 30 different ways to do different kinds of controls on photos, adjust light and exposure and color and all sorts of things. And that's all on the iPad. It was all brought to the iPhone too. And it's remarkable that it's able to fit even on the bigger phones. It's a lot smaller than an iPad. So it's kind of a neat app. And then we had iOS and iPadOS 15.2 come out. And what do you think of 15.2, Federico? It's an interesting, I guess, grab bag of things in it.
Yeah, that's how I would describe it. It's a smaller release with a grab bag of updates, like the new the macro mode in the camera, right? That you now see a proper button for when you want to use macro mode. There's the app privacy report that shows you all the details of which services, for example, apps that you use have been contacting behind the scenes. What else? There's some fixes to shortcuts. What else?
There's the Siri voice plans for Apple Music, which is a little, it's interesting. I don't know that a lot of people who cover Apple will have tried that, because a lot of them already subscribe to the regular Apple Music service. But this is a primarily voice controlled version of Apple Music with fewer features. It doesn't have real-time lyrics. I don't think music videos are included. A few other limitations like that, but it's $5 a month, which is a good deal. And then I guess finally we had Swift Playgrounds came out this week, which is Swift Playgrounds 4.0, which is the very first time. It's notable because it's the very first time you can actually upload an app that you build on your iPad to App Store Connect and start selling it for real money on the App Store. We haven't seen any that have been submitted and approved yet, but I expect we'll be seeing more of that probably right after the holidays, because you can use Swift UI and build an app. There's some limitations on the kinds of apps and what exactly they can do, but it is possible now for the very first time to do that. And as you're coding the app, to look at a live preview and see your app in action as you change the code, which is very cool.
Yeah, I think that will be definitely a thing that we will start seeing more and more. Like, this app was actually created on iPad. I think that will be one of the things we'll see over the next few weeks or the next few months on Apple blogs. Yeah, it's definitely going to be a theme.
As I understand it, that will not be, you won't be able to tell that from the App Store. It's not going to say like made on iPad or anything like that.
But developers
I'm sure we'll hear. Yeah, I'm sure we'll hear from people like that. And if you want to hear more about the trends that are coming in 2022, you should listen to App Stories next week, because we are going to do the trends that we expect to see in the year 2022. All right, well, that's enough about tech news, Federico. Let's go to the Xbox. I do not own an Xbox, so I want to hear what you're playing on Xbox, because I know you've been playing the Xbox probably more lately than other platforms. Is that right?
Yeah, I've been really enjoying Xbox, my Series X lately, to an extent, sometimes even more than the PS5, and that's because of this multiplicity of ways that you have to play Xbox games. You can own the physical game, or you can buy it digitally, or you can use Game Pass, and you can have remote play either on the same Wi-Fi network, or you can have cloud gaming, for example. Like, all these different ways to play Xbox games make it really fascinating for me. And I want to call out a few that I've been playing this year. Death's Door. It's fun, again, a sort of top-down action adventure game. It's this is a really pretty challenging but not unforgiving game. Again, Zelda inspired, Dark Souls inspired, but not as evil as Dark Souls. It's a nice game that has you travel. You play as Death, and again, it's a common theme. You gotta free these spirits that have taken over this world, and the combat is very tight and enjoying. And I love the character design and the overall aesthetic of this game. It shares many elements with Dark Souls and the sense of progression and moving through these different areas, but it's not nearly as challenging or unforgiving is a good word as a Dark Souls game. The two big games of the year on Xbox, of course, Forza Horizon 5 and Halo Infinite. So Forza Horizon 5, we mentioned before, excellent arcade driving game with this big, beautiful open world set in Mexico. There's this driving festival in Mexico. So many different cars to choose from. The graphics are absolutely incredible on a Series X. You can play at 4K, 60 frames per second. It looks amazing. It's fun. It's not realistic. It doesn't matter. It's an arcade racing game. The open world structure really works because you can just drive around and pick up hundreds of different side quests. The UI can be a little daunting at times with all these different things going on the map, but thankfully you can filter the map to just hide things like multiplayer challenges or seasonal events and stuff like that. There's a main story that you can follow, which I was not expecting from a Forza game. There's actually like a very lightweight story that you can, those are sort of like the main quests of the game. But otherwise, like, it's so fun, and this game has you like race down an exploding volcano, or recover an old Volkswagen Beetle, for example, and fix it up. Like there are so many different types of vehicles and challenges and different racing conditions. Like one race that I really enjoyed, you race. I was racing a BMW through this farmer field, and I was, it was super fun. I was like going off road, and I didn't have the right tires for off road. It's a beautiful game. It looks incredible. Different weather conditions that change in real time. Man, I love this game. What I am finding myself surprisingly attracted to is Halo Infinite, the single player campaign. Now,
that's interesting because this doesn't seem to me to be your kind of jam, really. That doesn't seem to be your kind of game to me.
No, but the thing is, so Halo multiplayer, not really my thing. I played some.
Yeah.
One thing that the Halo games have in common, because I've also played a bunch of so I never finished any Halo game, right? But this year I played a bunch of Halo 1 on the Master Chief Collection that is on Game Pass. Something that all the Halo games have in common is the controls are incredible. Like it feels right. It feels right to play a Halo game, just like it feels right to play Metroid Dread, which I want to mention later. But what really works for me in Halo Infinite is there's a surprisingly deep amount of lore behind the Halo story. Like there are something like 20 different novels that have been published about the universe of Halo, which I didn't know. There are tons of videos on YouTube about sort of the Halo timeline and recapping all the events leading up to Halo Infinite. So there's that aspect of like this generational story about these alien races and humans and Master Chief and Cortana, which is the AI in the Halo games. But so besides the story, what really works for me in the single player campaign, it's the open world approach. I'm finding that what works for me is an open world game that is open world, but not as sprawling as a Ubisoft game. The Ubisoft game is the kind of experience that I just cannot play anymore. Like an Assassin's Creed game or a Far Cry game, that's just too much. Too many things going on. Halo Infinite, it opens up nicely, progressively. And it's nice to walk around an open world Halo game and pick up a few sub quests, find collectibles, find upgrades, and then continue with the main story. And it looks gorgeous. It looks fantastic on Xbox Series X. It plays well. The controls are incredibly intuitive, and I like the story. I kind of like the story, and you can playing with the 120 field of view. Man, it's really nice looking. It's really nice looking. So yeah, I've been enjoying him. I've been enjoying Xbox this year.
Yeah, that's great. That's great. No, I think that there's a little bit more to offer there right now. We're kind of in a lull right now on everything. We haven't really gotten thoroughly into the next generation of games with PS5 or the Xbox, and the Nintendo Switch. Bit of a lull there too. I mean, I was just looking at these stats the other week of the top November sales for Nintendo games, and they're all old games at this point. They kind of need another hit at this point, I think. But that doesn't mean that we didn't also play a lot of Switch this year. And I'm curious to. Well, I've heard a lot, I guess, from you about Metroid Dread already,
Yes.
but I decided to wait on that one, and I've decided to hold off and not play until I had more time, and that's why that is my number one goal during the holidays, is to really get into that game. You gave me a couple of really nice amiibo that I can use with that when I was in Rome, and I'm looking forward to using those. And that's what I'm going to do. That's my Christmas Day game, I think.
Metroid Dread. I've talked about this before. I don't want to repeat myself here again. It's my game of the year. Like, we can skip right to that. I absolutely love Metroid Dread. It's an incredible game. This is the first game I have completed 100%.
I'm impressed because that's a hard game. It's a hard
game. All the collectibles, all the items, I've done it. So I'm really happy with it. I love this is my game of the year. Like, it's the game that defines my year. But yeah, it's not an easy game.
Yeah. So here's a game that I actually did kind of complete, which was Super Mario 3D World and Bowser's Fury. I finished the Bowser's Fury.
Oh, you did?
Part.
Nice.
Yeah,
I did not.
Oh,
okay.
I love that. It's so much fun. That game, and it gets pretty hard. Some of those Bowser battles at the end get really difficult. But that game, it just looks so great. It's so colorful. There's so much going on. It's a very classic Mario game. And I didn't play 3D World nearly as much. I'll probably come back to that at some point. But I really like the Bowser's Fury installment. I'd love to see Nintendo do something a little bit more like that with wherever they go next with Mario. Because it has that semi-open world feel to it. You can kind of go wherever you want and deal with the challenges there, and you can kind of go back at various junctures and collect new things. And yeah, that one's a lot of fun. I enjoyed playing that. What else did you play on the Switch this year?
I finished the main storyline. Again, not 2021 games, but the Pokemon Sword DLCs,
right.
Isle of Armor and the Crown Tundra. I finished the main storylines of both. I still need to complete the Pokédex of the DLCs at 100%. I plan to do it slowly, but there's also Pokemon Legends of Arceus coming out
very soon.
January, right? Oh man,
no, I think it's February.
February?
I think I might be wrong. I thought I saw that recently.
Release date. Let's see. What is it coming out? Oh, January 28th. So end of January.
All right.
Yeah, that I cannot wait for. I've been trying to stay away from spoilers and trailers and leaks as much as possible. But yeah, that game is gonna be the thing for me. But yeah, so I can take it slow, complete the Pokédex over time. It's fine. But I have been playing Pokemon Brilliant Diamond. So this is the remake of the Pokemon Diamond game from 15 years ago on Nintendo DS. It's now on Switch with improved graphics, some quality of life changes. It's a classic Pokemon game with random encounters. Doesn't have Pokemon in the overworld, unlike Pokemon Sword, right? And unlike Legends of Arceus is going to be really different. But this is a classic Pokemon game where if you want to avoid wild Pokemon, you gotta use a repel. So it's that sort of throwback experience, but with the improved graphics, with faster access to your PC boxes if you want to transfer Pokemon in and out of your team. So I've been enjoying that. And you mentioned already Bowser's Fury. It's another game that, like Ratchet and Clank, I paused, but I want to pick it up again and finish it. And I really enjoyed the sort of weird and different approach of this one compared to Mario Odyssey, or even it's bundled with 3D World, but it's a very different game from Mario 3D
It
World.
Really is. Yeah. I remember when it first came out, our friend Mike was having a hard time figuring out how to get to Bowser's Fury. I think it's just weird how it's like two games kind of smushed together without any. I don't know. I mean, it's strange the way they did it, but I guess Nintendo maybe felt like they didn't have enough with just 3D World, and I'm glad they put out Bowser's Fury. Maybe it was an experiment, but I think it was a successful experiment and one that I hope they do more of. I played Brilliant Diamond this year too, and I like that game. It's just a really relaxing game to me. And it's they've kind of given it elements to make it fit in pretty nicely with Sword and Shield. In terms of some of the mechanics, the way they've made them a little bit more modern and a little easier, as you said, to play the game. and I like the graphics. It looks amazing on the OLED Switch. Another game
Yes.
that it isn't a this year game, but another older game that I was playing just recently is Burnout on the Switch,
Oh,
and it
nice.
makes a big difference on the OLED screen. You can really, especially in handheld mode, you can really get a sense for where you are and what's going on around you as you race through the streets. I was thinking about it as you were talking about Forza, but yeah, Brilliant Diamond, another great game, and I'm gonna that's one to me that I just kind of dip in and out of periodically. So I'll continue to play that over the next few months at least.
Yeah, I want to close this out by mentioning a few games that I'm looking forward to playing next. So these two 2022 releases that are coming out next year, Elden Ring is going to be a big deal. This is the AAA next installment in the Dark Souls series from Software. Elden Ring sort of blending some Breath of the Wild elements with the classic Dark Souls and Bloodborne mechanics. I want to try and see if I can get into this. I've never played a Dark Souls game before. I didn't play Bloodborne. I didn't play Sekiro. I want to see if I can get into this. If it's not too dark or difficult for me, I want to try. There's also Triangle Strategy. This is a isometric tactics game from Square Enix with the sort of Octopath Traveler look to it.
Okay,
I am gonna try this because I'm a sucker for strategy games. Eventually, someone will do a proper port of either Final Fantasy Tactics or Jeanne d'Arc from PSP. But I keep dreaming of that. I'm also looking forward to picking up some older games that I want to check out at some point. Real quickly, I want to play the first Danganronpa. Danganronpa is a visual novel about kids in high school who are playing this sort of battle royale game where they need to murder each other and get away with murder. It's a very weird game, and I love it. The Triple Click podcast did an excellent episode about the Danganronpa series recently. I want to play the first one. This is a game that actually came out 6 years ago, and it's now out on Switch as a compilation of the first 3 games.
I want to remember that.
Yeah, I want to check out this new title from the makers of the Steam World games. You may remember the Steam
World Dig and all that.
Steam World Dig and Heist. They have a new game out on Game Pass today called The Gunk, and it looks really good and weird at the same time. And it's an action platformer game that looked really good in the videos that I've seen. I've seen Steven Totilo, a video game journalist that I follow, works at Axios Gaming now, I believe. He's been tweeting a few screenshots and videos of The Gunk, and it looks really nice. And I want to check out Tales of Arise. This is a classic Bandai Namco RPG game, massive RPG game in the Tales series that looks fantastic with this cartoon 3D graphics. And supposedly it's a really good RPG. And lastly, I will mention that at some point, I would like to try and get back into Horizon Zero Dawn. So this is the PS4 game that got an upgrade on PS5. I want to try and see if I can play the first Horizon before the next one comes out, before Forbidden West, I believe, which comes out when? In February? In March, maybe? Forbidden West comes out February 18. So maybe I can, because I played like 10 or 15 hours of Horizon last year, 2020, maybe, 2 years ago. And then I dropped it. But now I feel like I'm in a different mindset for this kind of game. Maybe I can check it out. I want to check it out again before the new one, basically. Yeah.
All right, that sounds good. I'm going to be on the lookout for more PS5 games this year. But right now I've been thinking a lot about the Switch since I got the OLED Switch a couple of months ago. And Eastward is one of the games that came out not too long ago that I want to check out. I like the graphic style of it, and I've heard a lot of good things about it. Ali World seems really interesting to me because it's so different than the original Ali visually, and I like those games originally. So yeah, that's another one that really attracts me. and the new Pokemon game that's coming out in January. That's going to be, that'll be right at the top of my list. So, I'm really killing time until then and catch up on this backlog, including also playing some very old games, some actual Game Boy games on my Analog Pocket, which, as we record this, should come tomorrow if they don't screw up the order once again. I hope FedEx makes its way to my house because it was supposed to come earlier and it hasn't gotten here yet. But
well, good luck.
I've look, Federico, the good thing about their delay is I have been collecting games over time. I've been doing research. I've been going to video game websites and picking up cartridges here and there. So I've rounded out my collection and I have a lot of things to play. So I'm looking forward to that. All right. That's it for 2021 with MacStories Unwind. You can find me and Federico over at MacStories.net. Federico is on Twitter and Instagram where he's at Viticci. That's VITICCI. And I'm at John Voorhees. JOHNVOORHWS. Talk to you next year, Federico.
Ciao, John.